Hello everyone, this is Evan Abrams, and thank you for sticking with us here on Behance Live. If you're just joining us, you've stepped into the Motion Design Makeover, part of the Friday where we're going to look at a brand and we are going to give them a little bit of a motion makeover, redesigning some of their assets so that they move. Thanks again for joining us. If you're jumping into the chat, let me know who you are, where you're from, and what you do in motion design. We're going to be working with After Effects primarily in here, but also a little bit of Illustrator sometimes. And at the end of this, we're actually going to be creating some templates. So we might, if we have time, fire open Premiere, see how they look. Before we jump into it, though, we need to talk about who we're actually going to be designing for today. All this series, we've been looking at nonprofits that are local to the Bay Area, so San Francisco, and this week we are talking about the Bay Area Video Coalition. So let me just jump on over to my screen. The Bay Area Video Coalition, BAVC, they are a group who empower media makers to develop, well, it says it right here on their website. They are a coalition that help people gain media literacy skills in terms of production, providing fantastic facilities and seminars. If you're in the Bay Area, definitely check them out, and hopefully they can make use of the stuff that we make for them. As a video group, you would think, oh, you know what, they probably need to put their branding on a bunch of video content. So that's what we'll be making for them today. They were gracious enough to come and be part of the process, so they sent on over their brand guide here. I love a good brand guide. That's always a great place to start when we're going to be doing some branded motion design. Talks about their identity system, their excellent logo here, which I have to say, hats off. I do really enjoy this logo. It seems a little maybe basic for a video type production place, but I just love how clean, like this little gap here between the A and this CRT-V kind of thing is. So that's what we'll be jumping into. But like I said, if you're just joining us here in the chat, let me know who you are, where you're from, what do you do in motion design, and love to help you out. And if you run into trouble at any point, if you're confused by anything we're talking about, then please let me know, and we'll take a pause. We'll get to your questions. I want to hear what people are up to. So without further ado, let's talk about the process. You can kind of see on the board back there, I've been doing a little bit of sketching with chalk as we consider what would we do with this brand, what elements are essential, what things are important. One of the big considerations when we're talking about a brand such as Bay Area Video Coalition is that this is primarily about video. And I don't want to get into a big thing about the difference between video and film, but one thing that's interesting about video is its accessibility. When it first hit the market, it was all about sort of democratizing production. You don't need to develop film. You just smash a VHS. Oh, sorry, for you millennials out there like me, a VHS is a kind of large rectangle that is jammed into things. But the Bay Area Video Coalition has been helping people out since the 70s. They're a very warm place. They're a place for everybody. So we need to keep those brand ideas in mind when we're producing something for this client. Think about warmth, think about inclusion, but also they have a very professional edge. VHS and video work used to be very punk rock, but this is clearly a very professional design. So let's get in here and see what we can do. So just turn the screen on here and get into it. Paco is asking if a VHS is downloadable. Now, he and I talked about Betamax tapes because that is the form of media that I was first introduced to with video. So now you know my kind of approximate age. But yeah, that is sort of kind of an archaic form. Is there a VHS dongle for my laptop? Absolutely, Tim. We'll ship that out. So we're looking at their branding. We know that they have 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of logo marks that they make use of. So if we're going to be creating templates for them to put on a video, then we kind of have to think about these use cases, right? How is the work we're going to do actually, how's it going to be used? So if we're thinking about templates before, back in the day, we probably would have had to make 1, 2, 3, 4 templates, right? We would need one for white background with the text under it, one for white background without the text on it. Oh, so clunky, right? Because if we need to make an alteration to one of them, we're going to have to alter 4 things instead of 1 thing. And we only want 1 thing, not 4 things. So let's try to make one template that can incorporate all 4 of these things. Yeah, and if there is a VHS version of this, I would like it. I would like to have the VHS version of these live streams if possible. Also in the chat, let me know the first video that you had, your first VHS that you had around the house. For me, I want to say it was The Last Unicorn, maybe. A very, very 80s movie. So looking at these use cases, let me show you where we're going. So we are going to just jump into After Effects here. And this is kind of the end state we want to get to. Here's my dog. This is a picture of my dog. Say that's a video or a photo or something going on. And then we just want to have this nice, simple, clean. We have this background come up and then this logo animate on. And to give a nod to their video roots, we had a little scan line situation going on. And when we're thinking about functionality, right, what is the goal of functionality? Well, we want them to be able to use this one template to represent those 4 things. So, as you can see, we can go from light mode to dark mode. Everything's cooler in dark mode. Let's all switch everything into night mode. Oh, Refurb Mike, your first VHS was Apocalypse Now? That's crazy. That's crazy town. And we want to be able to turn this little subtitle, it's not really a subtitle, but we want to be able to turn that on and off. And what's really important, if we go back to their brand guides, when we look at things like how the scaling is supposed to be affected, this thing is supposed to recenter, right? So if we have the subtitle, we take it away, this thing needs to recenter back to where it belongs. So in this case, that means that when we turn this on and off, we need to account for this vertical shift. We can't just turn the layers on and off. So we are going to be making use of a fairly new feature, fairly new to the After Effects Mogurt kind of ecosystem. It's these drop-down options. I mean, I don't know if anyone from the After Effects team is watching this. I just want to say, where's my camera? Here's my camera. Thank you for including these. These are a huge feature change that really allows us to strip away a lot of the oopsies that a client might make when we're handing this off. So when we're thinking about templates, we have to think about what kind of controls are we actually going to give to the end user, and what do they need? What can we withhold? You know, what level of change do they really need from this thing? And one thing that's essential for somewhere like the Bay Area Video Coalition is that you need to be able to give this to anybody at almost any skill level, have them be able to interact with it and basically not break it. Because if the purpose is for community members to make use of this, it's got to be simple. It's got to be simple. I can't tell you the number of large brands out there, certain Northern California tech computer companies who do not yet embrace the Mogurt lifestyle and these motion graphics templates and just using this to simplify how things are going. So Sasso says he loves these new menu controls. I do too, and I love the people who made them. So After Effects team, thank you. This is why I have your pillow on the wall. So let's dive in, and how do we get this started? Our journey usually begins actually in Illustrator with this kind of thing. So we would be hopping from one app to another. And before we jump in too far, I know we're 10 minutes in, but if you are joining me here on the live stream and you happen to be on YouTube, well, you should come on over to behance.net/live so that I can see all of your wonderful comments. So I'd love to see what's going on. I'd love to get any questions. So come join us in the Behance chat so that we can have that chat and you be part of the process. So when you usually get a logo, it's usually not coming in nice and broken up like this. In fact, hold on, let me get you the orig here, that OG Bay Area logo here. Originally, this file is coming in like this. This is usually how things come. Oh, look, there's some guides. Thank you for that. I don't really know what to do with those. You can just delete things like that. But hey, wouldn't you know it, we've got it all in a group, and we've got it all on one layer, and then we've got groups inside groups, and hey, we're really, really loving to group things up. Because this is made for print. It's not made for video. In fact, this file is even in a CMYK color mode. You want to change that over to RGB, keeping in mind that when we give that a little click, these don't look black anymore. These blackest blacks are process black, and this color here might have changed. All the colors might have changed when you do that. So always, always, always go back, reference the hex color for your colors. Make sure that we are keeping everything on brand. Know your Pantones. Get in there to the hex values. You don't want to come into the finish line and have someone tell you about that. So let's roll it on back here. The thing I want to do with this is break it up onto its constituent layers and think about what I want to animate in what ways. And because all you out there are also designers, you know, I'd love to hear what you would have done with this as well. I'd love to see everyone's perspective on this. So for me, I wanted to keep it simple. And in fact, when I look at this logo and I look at all the shapes, we think about points of contrast. So all of these things are the same color, various kind of same shapes. The big point of contrast is right here, this big old V inside the CRT, cathode ray tube. Sorry, CRT monitors are a kind of old-time computer technology. So what we want to do is start separating this out. So we're going to be ungrouping everything and breaking it up into its constituent parts. Then I like to just start making a heap of layers, making all the layers, and then just start grabbing things. This little, it's really hard to see here, but there's a little tiny box in this layer over here. I'll just reach through the monitor here and grab that. But we just pull that up to the next layers. So we select these groups, we're pulling it up to the layers, selecting these groups, moving it up to the layers. Now, eagle-eyed observers will see that I use the Overlord extension a lot. And, you know, I like to use that to move assets really quickly, but I want to make sure this is accessible. So this is what everyone can do. So you want to move things to layers. You want to always rename these layers, something you will recognize in the future time. So always be renaming them, double clicking on here and changing it up. So, and Reverb Mike is also saying that it would have been good to find this font and then make the shapes in After Effects. What's really great, especially about brand guides, is that they often say, hey, this is the font we're using. You know, in this case, it's Fago Condensed. Fago is kind of a funny name for a font. I'm not sure why. Isn't that a soft drink that's dangerous? Anyway, so this is the font they're using, and we know the ways in which it is used. These are some other fonts that they would use. So we really get to know the ecosystem that these people would make use of. So we could actually find that font if we wanted to do text animator things. We can make that happen, reconstructing this in After Effects, which is great. Oh, I apologize for any burps that happen on mic. I'm terribly sick today. But something I'll say about logos specifically, I don't want to labor this too much, but often there's a lot of custom kerning that's going on. A lot of care has been taken in adjusting the space between here and the space between there and all the little spaces in here. Usually excellent logos have a lot of good kerning going on in here. So we want to respect that whenever we are dealing with these brand assets and making sure that we are arriving kind of at the final version. It can often just be helpful to just import this thing here in and, that's import this and then use it as kind of a backdrop, a template to make sure all of our elements are lining up pixel perfect at the end, because we have that power. We have the power to do anything digitally. And Good Luck Focus, that's a good question. Is the client obligated to have a brand guide? No, and in fact, a lot of smaller shops probably do not have a brand guide. But I'll say this, as a designer, that's something you can sell people on. I think it's very useful to have. Brand guides and templates and all this stuff are very helpful when brands are going to go out and start commissioning work from freelancers, outside sources, or even internal sources to really codify who is this company, what is our voice, what do we do? Even if you're a YouTuber, even if you are a Twitch streamer, even if you are just creating things for your own shop, it's really helpful to really think about what is the system we use? How do we represent ourselves? So, if anyone is sort of kind of floating in space, right? You don't want to be detached from everything. You want to be certain about what you're doing so that when a print designer or a motion designer or any designer comes to work with that brand, it's really helpful to just say, hey, here's a document. This is what's up. And it really helps. If people don't have it, try to sell someone on it because it really is great. It is a great tool. Anyway, I'm loving all these abbreviations. Are they abbreviations? Oh, what am I thinking of? Is laser an abbreviation? You know what? WordPad ants, let me know what an abbreviation is and does in the chat because I have forgotten. But I don't want to belabor this too much because we're doing a bit of a cooking show here. I've already broken this up into its constituent parts. I love this idea. We could use this as a play button, perhaps. If we think about how might these shapes work together, maybe it comes in as a play button and then we press it and it turns. That could be a cool idea. For me, I really want to play up that old school video feel. I want to think about the history of this place. They've been around since the late 70s. That's a long time to be serving a community as one entity. So, Roland's bringing it in with the stats. Fewer than 1% of brands have a brand guide for MoGraph. That is true. So, there are some big systems like IBM has it. I believe that Hewlett-Packard also has a similar thing. So these large companies have thought about this because they know that video content is important, etc. So, it's a lot of stuff. So once we've got this broken up, we're going to break this bad boy apart and we're going to then just open this in After Effects. So I'm going to close down Illustrator to save some RAM. And yeah, I guess we could. Should we? We're going to save the EPS? No, don't save it. But what you do want to do is save things as .ai files. I really think saving things as the .ai is the way to go. If it comes in as an EPS, we can still use it as an EPS, but you really want to increase your compatibility across platforms. So saving as a .ai, highly recommend. That's my personal taste. Not everyone wants to do that, but... So here we are in After Effects. Like I said, we are going to cooking show ahead a little bit into here just to get into some of these ideas. But if we were to import this in fresh, all right, so let's go ahead. Oh, this is where I keep pictures of my dog. And we just want to bring in the BAVC cut up RGB, convert to RGB, please. And we're going to bring that in. We're not import it as footage, bring it as a composition. Open that up. We want it as a composition. We want it to retain the layer sizes because if we go into this bad boy here, now all of these are just the size of that layer. Great. Now we can start working with this. We can start to do some stuff. I like that idea of a play button. I think that's pretty fun. I think I'm gonna take notes from the audience, and we are actually gonna do that. Oh, and Reverb Mike is talking about copying and pasting between the two apps here, and that's definitely a possibility that you can just copy in one, paste in the other. There's sometimes a little bit of trouble with things not pasting exactly relative to the frame in the way that I would like them. Again, that's one of the things that Overlord really takes care of. I just love that thing. So if we're talking about ending at a rest state here, if this is our final resting area that we want to end up at, then you really want to start setting keyframes to decide, all right, this is where we're going to end up. So if this is how we want to go places, then hold on, I'm just going to shrink this down. We're not ready for the Essential Graphics panel yet, but we'll get to it. It's coming up. Let's see. I think I wanted to do something with the rotation and then this TV icon back here. I think we'll do something with its scale. So let me just hit S to call up its scale. Because I think we want to do like that button push, right? So what would that look like if we wanted to do a little button push? And I think when we push the button, that's when we'll click in and then come back and it'll be, the thing we want. So I'm going to set 2 keyframes, just clicking the keyframe button here, moving ahead. We're going to set 3 of them like this, and we'll massage our timing later. So if we're going to press down, click, that's going to be a that's going to be a press down. It's going to be like maybe an 80%. Ooh, that's a big press. That's a big press. Let's just go to 90. Then we can hit F9 while selecting these, and we'll just ease those a little bit. That's an okay press. When we press buttons, I think we can be a little bit playful, and we can have this spring up a little bit. So I'm going to go back. Sorry, I'm going to go forward 10 frames. Ooh, this cold is making me loopy. And we are going to just amp this up a little bit. Here we go. So the full motion that we want, if we look at the graph editor, is going to be down and up. Nice and relaxed. Now we can start dragging these handles, and we are looking at a speed graph here, so just keep that in mind. Just start dragging these handles around, and we think press, snap. So that could be the way we want to do it, or maybe we want something a little bit more like this, so it's always click. Maybe that's something. Maybe we massage these a little bit like this. This is a very subjective series of things. Click. So that could be fun. Let's think about that. But oh yeah, a bit of an inertial bounce we're hearing. What's this? What thingies do I have in my MoGraph component library? Oh, my component library. What do we mean by component library? We're talking about this libraries over here. I like to use the libraries to hold a lot of colors. So if we are working with, for example, this color palette here, I would like to make that a color theme. Bring that in here. Oh dear. That way I can reference them really quickly with an eyedropper. That's a lot of fun. That's the main thing that I like to do over there. And yeah, Reverb Mike is talking about the inertial bounce. We could just use an expression to deal with these kinds of things. I used to be way into expression-driven motion. I think as I've gotten older, I've started to rely more on keyframes. I want things to be a little snappier, a little punchier. Sorry for snapping in the microphone. But if we want this thing to pretend like it's part of the button, we should just parent this to the icon. So there we go. So it's going to click and do that. And now we've got that rotation up, and we know its final state for this is going to come in, and it's going to rotate to the final position like this. And is it not? Oh, that'll be a reverse. That's not a play button. Now it's kind of a play button. So when it goes click, and then when it comes up, that's when we are going to snap, kabam, like this. So let's give it maybe motion click, click, maybe, because that's when the information gets to whatever computer is powering this click. And here's something I'll say about consistency of motion. If we are being playful and cartoony and this thing is bouncing, then you need to be a little bit playful and cartoony with every other step of the process. So I'm copying this last keyframe and then moving ahead a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to overcrank this a little bit like this. Degrees are finicky. You don't need a lot of them to convey motion. But we end up with something maybe like this. Click. So now this kind of wiggles into place. That's nice and playful. I like that. I'm having fun with that. And to simplify, we might even just say that this would be the only element that moves in this way, perhaps. Perhaps this is the only element that moves this way. When you're thinking about logo animation, consider readability. That's kind of a big thing that we want to jump into. So in here, you would probably want to do something banal for all of these other elements so that this element has its time to shine. If it's just a profusion of movement throughout the piece, what do we really attach to? What do we really look at, right? So again, just to cooking show us a little bit, because I know we're coming into the halfway point here a little bit. Joe's saying should have a little delay between the button scale and the V's scale. Ooh, interesting. So it's sort of like they're floating kind of independent from each other, you're feeling. So it's like, okay, the button's going down and then this is kind of hovering above it. That could be something. Or maybe even if it's so extreme that maybe it's like a parallax kind of effect that, these things kind of go with each other. Or, you could really get extreme with this and start thinking like, oh, I know. It's like this is being pressed down right into the button there, right? If it's coming off the off the thing. So that's always something to consider, is how deep, how many layers of nuance do you really want to put into this? Which again, kind of brings me back to my idea that we want to think about, what really needs to happen with this, right? How much animation, how much movement is going to be valuable to this, and is it in keeping with the brand? So it's always something to think about. Jan is asking if I'm related to J.J. Abrams. I don't think so. I think if you go back far enough, you go far enough back, maybe all of us Abramses are related to each other, but it's not very likely. I don't have a lot of American relatives, or do I? You know what? If you're related to me in America, you let me know. So we'll see how that goes. But like I said, let's cooking show this bad boy, and because I want to make sure we have time to talk about how we would turn this into a template. So let's look at this kind of original example and talk just a little bit. That's true. We got to get some lens flares on this. As you know, this is my dog, and they produce all kinds of lens flares. So let me just, you asked for lens flares. Oh, I hate to do this to you, Sherb, but there you go. We're gonna put this little default lens flare on you. How about this? And then lens flare. We're 35 prime. Definitely, this is a prime doggy. So there we go. Which is kind of weird, but anyway. So, well, now he looks like a Terminator dog. I can't do that to you, Sherb. I can't do it. What you guys don't know is that Sherbert the dog is actually off frame, just down at my feet right now. So what we want to do when we're thinking about animating this thing on, they did have some branding notes that were very, very instructive with how this kind of template should look. They'd already kind of figured out that this needs to be a clean type of thing, a clean transition on, and this is sort of what would happen at the end. This is what would go on at the end of a video, right? So it's covering things up. We have this background here that is really just coming in. We're changing its opacity and its position. So the position is just cruising in, starting very, very extreme, then easing in like so. And then we're having this opacity change come in as well, keeping it very relaxed as we come in. So that's kind of the idea. But like I said, if any questions kind of come up, folks, you get at me in the chat. I guess we are going to jump into expressions here, right? So I just want to make sure if anyone is very uncomfortable with expressions, or if they are intimidating or even terrifying, you let me know. We can go slow. We'll get there. All right. So we'll see if we can arrive. So how would we turn this thing? Let's say we animated a whole bunch of stuff in here, all of these wonderful effects going on, all of this interesting stuff. How are we then going to give the functionality we want to the end client, assuming that all of the animation is locked, right? You want to make sure that you've kind of locked down what you want to do so that we can come back and make changes. So Joel is asking, why couldn't it just be a video with an alpha? Absolutely. And that is a one way to sort of make this stuff work. Where that kind of falls down as we get into like versioning, and I will say that if this is locked, right, if there's going to be never any changes and all this stuff, then exporting a whole bunch of things with alpha are kind of handy, right? But that can take up a lot of space sometimes. Mogurts are actually pretty streamlined, and if I have to render out this thing in 4K, and anyone who wants to then use this is also going to need this kind of giant file and deal with that. You then have to host it somewhere and send it to people, make sure that everyone's got the right version. One of the things I love about Mogurts as compared to just rendering off alpha things is that flexibility, that changes can happen. Maybe they have to happen seasonally. there are use cases for all kinds of ways to go. But I will say that when it comes to a brand system, something that may require updates, may require changes, it can be a lot easier to store those files somewhere. Anyway, just a thought. And then Roland's saying such a template is great as a transition or a breakpoint. Oh, there's so many things we can do with the motion graphics templates. Love them all. But I think Joel brings a really good point that you always want to be considering in your workflow, is this the efficient use, right? So is it more efficient to render off 4 alpha channeled things, or is it more efficient that we go off one Mogert that can do it all, right? So always something to think about when we are looking at our design ecosystem, our design system in general. So we've got this stuff together, and I think we were talking about what functionality do we want to actually give to our client. And so what functionality do we want to give? Well, as we looked, the 2 things are we want to be able to turn Bay Area Video Coalition on and off, and we would like to be able to change the colors. Okay, good. I'm with you. We're changing the colors. Thankfully, this is very flat. There aren't a lot of like gradients and stuff or textures or all those things. So, that would be a great functionality to put in. How are we going to do that? Well, I like to drop a bunch of fill effects on everything because we really just need to change all of the pixels into this color, right? So we just need everything to become these colors. And then we're going to use an expression on them to point all of them. We're going to point all of the colors to color pickers, right? And so the idea here is that we are going to point every color, all of these will be looking at color 1, color 2, color 3 up here. So let me just hit EE. I'll just hit E once, which will bring up, there we are. There's the fills. Don't hit your keyboard so quickly that it forgets. So the client gets to decide how many lens flares I used. No, it's an Abrams tradition that I will decide how many lens flares to use. And Andy, I see you asking here, how often do I find myself doing work that revolves around creating templates for clients? More and more all the time. As we move into a kind of ecosystem that can be standardized and then delivered, then we are looking at a lot more of this stuff. I think it helps that I'm kind of positioned as someone who does a lot of expression work and makes things responsive and reflexive. So that's kind of a thought. But yeah, that's something to think about, that it is an interesting shift in dynamics that as opposed to rendering and then the client comes back and I need you to do this again and then render it and charge them for a little hour here, a little hour there, all these little things. So that's more on the business side. We can get into that later. Let's keep it creative. Let's keep it in this space. I don't want to get too bogged down with biz. I don't get too into the weeds with biz. So, like I said, you want to set up these color pickers. Color 1, color 2, color 3. I've spelled it the American way, even though I put a U in all of them because you color my life. So color 1, color 2, color 3, these pickers, right, we want to then either use fill effects and then link all of those fill effects using the pick whip to their appropriate colors. Then all we have to do is adjust these colors in here and all the other colors will update. Right. So, for example, let's see. I just want to make sure that I'm not touching one of these. Good. So let's say color number 1, they suddenly change their branding and now it needs to be blue, right? Because those are linked together. It's not a great example because only one of the layers does that. Well, how about color 2? Well, maybe that color would change, right? Because that's the middle there. The big one that changes the most here is this bad boy right here, this color 3, which determines all these other colors, the B, A, the C, the Bay Area Video Coalition. And that's because that's the one that's going to switch. That's the toggle when we go from light mode to dark mode. Also, let me know in the chat if you're team dark mode or team light mode. I'd love to know who's using what version of Twitter. So, where do we go next? So, The function we want to give people is using a drop down, right? And we want to then point at the drop down. This is the expression we're going to end up writing. If you have trouble with expressions, if you find them very cumbersome and dangerous, well, don't worry. Adobe's got your back. There is a pretty good article about drop downs in particular, right? And, this is, we can put, maybe we can drop the URL for this in the chat so that people can enjoy this particular article that comes out. And it posits two different ways of using drop-downs. There are many. There's so many different ways we could use expressions to power things with the drop-downs. I kind of like this one because it's a little bit more straightforward. I like to reduce the number of if-else checking that happens during any of these things. We want to keep our motion graphics templates light if we can. It's an interesting kind of struggle to try to keep things light because we always have to think about who's using this, what kind of machine, how powerful, how do we keep it trim? How do we keep this stuff trimmed down and light? We'll get into other things like hopefully we can get into making changes to Mogerts once they've already been used in a Premiere project. Usually we just overwrite in Premiere. If you've got a new version of the Mogert, you save it, you overwrite it, and then After Effects Premiere loves to say, hey, I saw you changed one of these Mogerts. I got some more for you to change. You want me to just go ahead and do that? You go ahead and you click it, and it runs them all through. I kind of love that little feature. But in terms of if someone's already altered little things about the template, I know that a lot of the controls actually continue on exactly the same. I think if they have the exact same name, they'll work. Don't quote me on that. But I had to do a lot of versioning of some things that had a lot of text. So they're mid-break titles of a YouTube video. I'm on the YouTubes. Check it out. But all the titles, I'd already entered them in Premiere. And then you go back and you just Alt, drag, and replace. It replaces them all. All the titles I wrote were already still in there. Even though I changed a lot of visual elements about it, everything else was fine. So, not to get too derailed on that, I need to take some water. If you're just joining late, I'm very sick today, and talking is difficult. Okay, so like I said, we want to get some functionality to people. We want to eventually get to a point where we can just be dropping in these two controls, dark mode or light mode. And we want the dark mode and the light mode to be effectively rewriting this information. We want the text here to change. We want this background to change. Ooh, definitely important for this background to change. Black letters on black background, no bueno. So we want that to happen. So this is where we can kind of look at the most basic version of this stuff. So on this adjustment layer here, got to make sure, feel better soon. I'm sure I'm gonna feel better about an hour. That's great. And we're gonna maximize the amount of time that my cute doggy is on the screen. Sherbert is not a good boy. He is a bad dog. He often eats things he should not be eating. Don't let his face fool you. No, all dogs are good dogs. So we just go ahead, we put out an adjustment layer, and we just drag out on there the drop-down menu control. You drag it out onto here into this space, and by default, it comes with three options. Let me just, so you can see. You get drop-down menu control, you can rename this thing, and you end up with item 1, item 2, item 3, okay? Now, if you need more items, fewer items, rename the items, hit edit, and there's the window on monitor number 2, and you end up with this dialog. Oh boy, cough away from the mic. And then you can go in here and you can change item 1's names. You can name them whatever you'd like. You can add more, you can remove them. You have to select them to remove them. This is where you populate the list. And pay close attention to this number here. This number is what's important. This is the actual value that is being returned by the list. Okay. So one thing that's really useful is to remember, okay, item 1, okay, what is that? I might name it something. This is what the end user will be seeing, but we will know it in expressions as 1. So, this could be banana. This could be, I don't know, coconut. This could be, I don't know, ceviche. And I'm not great at spelling right now, but you can name these whatever you'd like. That's the option that is going to show up in here, in this space. But remember, in this case, if we go back to color schemes, spelled the Canadian way, dark equals 1, light equals 2. So that, got to keep that in mind as we are writing our expressions. So how then are we going to use the color scheme to power things? Well, let's get into the background here. I'm going to just hit UU, and we're going to toggle in to what we have here, and this is the fill color, right? I've opted to use the version that we have here. This is a nice thing to copy and paste. Just drop it down. And what we're doing is we are first naming something called dropdown index. This is a variable, so you could always write var dropdown index. And this is just saying, what are we pointing at? Which effect are we even looking at? And in this case, we are looking at this comp that's called end card. That's the name of the comp we're in. Dot, getting more specifically, we're looking at layer called adjustment layer 2. Hey, there it is. So we're looking at that. Let's get more specific. It's another period, another full stop. So we're looking at the effect named color scheme. And then we're looking into the menu, and then even more specifically, most specifically, we are looking at the dot value. So we're looking at the dot value of that menu item, the value 1 or 2 in this case, light or dark. Or sorry, dark or light. I don't want to get it twisted. So that's the dot value. Close that out with a little semicolon. Always use your semicolons. If I'm being redundant for people, it's because I really love talking about expressions. I could just rhyme these off all day long. And then what we're going to use is an expression. I seldom use this one. This is called the switch. And we're saying switch. And now what are we switching around? We're going to be switching around that drop-down index. And then we've got case 1, case 2. When it says 1, then we're going to be looking at this. So this is very similar to the if else or the if then kind of thing. Or this is actually a lot closer to the try and catch. We're just setting in here case 1 is going to be this. So this is case 1, do this. So when your number is 1, this is what I would like you to run. I'd like you to run this little thing down here. And what it's saying is hex to RGB. And that's going to take this hex code, transpose it into, number colon, number comma, number, which is how we like to think about color. This is how After Effects understands this color value here is actually a 4-part array. It's like part. But we usually understand color as hex values because hex values are kind of interchangeable between different ecosystems. So we're dealing with that. That's case 1. That's case 2. So we're going to be either ooh or and then this default one, which we actually probably won't use because things are either 1 or 2. But in this case, I've put in the green value. So if things ever really fall apart, this should become green, but you'd probably want to use one of these 2 other values. This is actually the green of that. I was messing around to see if I could break it. So as we're talking about, Joel is talking about introducing errors that it won't be able to handle. Yeah, you definitely don't want expressions that will break, right? Because if there is something that requires user input, like say if we made someone type out dark or light, right? If someone had to type that out and they typed it wrong, there'd be an error and then everything would break. So this is a really helpful way to make sure things don't break. So what does that mean? Well, when we're changing from light to dark, then this value is going to change. And that's the easy mode stuff. No problems, no trubs. So like we say, we go dark, we go light. Is that? Let me know if that is confusing though. In the let me know in the chat if that is troubling, or if everybody's good with that. The other thing that's happening out in this comp that I really want to talk about is this toggle, this ability to toggle on and off this subtitle. Ooh, how's this working? Well, this, when it goes off, when this is off, of course, we won't see these. But the other thing, it has to bump down. It's got to bump down. So how do we accomplish that kind of functionality? And you might have to do this little reframing dance every so often. You might say, well, I know, I will just allow my users to have the anchor point. I'll just drag the anchor point in here and people can adjust it as they'd like. Totally valid way to go. There you go. Now people can customize the anchor point, put it wherever you like. Go crazy. It's Outback Steakhouse in here. No rules. But that's a type of functionality I'm not willing to give people. So in this case, I really just want this to toggle on and off. So what I've done is on this anchor point, I have written this expression. Let me spread it out so that it maybe fits a little bit better. We're looking at a variable that we've called, we're looking at that checkbox. We're looking at this checkbox right here. I'm going to lock that down. And so we're pointing at that checkbox. Checkboxes have values that are either 1 or 0, on or off. And so if, and then we put in the parentheses, if the checkbox equals 1, or is exactly equal to 1, just try to remember that you need to put 2 equal signs in there when you're being specific. And then we end up with, what does it do after that? Well, if that's the case, you should just have whatever value you had, which in this case is going to be whatever anchor point value it's got going on. So whatever the value of the anchor point is, just do that. I love where you are. Don't change. Else, if anything else becomes true, so that means anything other than 1, which in this case is 0, then the value, we're going to go with value minus, subtracted, this thing in square brackets, an array, 0, 50, meaning no change horizontally, but 50 change up and down. I don't know if these hand gestures are helping. Make sure the check doesn't bounce. Joel is asking, have I ever delivered a template or a Mogert to someone who's running their CC apps in another language? Yes, all the time. Welcome, I'm from Canada. Bonjour tout le monde. And, of course, bonjour to everyone in Quebec, and in France as well, and other parts of the world that speak French. A lot of places speak that. But when you are having to universalize these things, the names of them often change. This is why, I'm going to have to, hold on, I'm going to Google it on a totally other screen, and then when I figure it out, I'm going to bring it in here. But there's something called the expression universalizer from AE Scripts. There we go. The expression universalizer, currently I guess in 3. A little pricey, but this is something that will look at everything you've got and it will salute him. And so it will shift everything to be universalized. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that we wouldn't be using names of things. So if we brought in a slider control, the slider control in another language wouldn't be named slider control. It would be named whatever makes sense. But the important thing to remember is that all of these things have like an index number. So just like layers have an index number, so has these. So we can look at them by their index. We can look at properties by an index value. And that is the sort of thing I think that the expression universalizer does. I'll be honest with you. I usually just hit the universalize button and then I walk away from it. It creates a whole bunch of strings in there that are kind of sometimes wacky town. But if you're working with multiple languages, that is the place to go. You can hold down, Roland, you can hold down Alt while dragging a property to create universalized expressions. Really? I did not know that, Roland. You've taught me something I have to try later today. That's going to be great. Interesting, interesting. Alt picking. Okay. I'm going to do that. We're going to do that live right now. So instead of this, I'm going to Alt pick. Okay, here we go. Holding down Alt, and then we're going to pick that checkbox. Okay. I gotcha. I'm feeling this. This is great. Oh, my goodness. Wonderful. Okay. Well, I'm just very lazy, so I'll just use the universalizer to knock that stuff out. But yeah, thank you so much, Roland. I love that. I'm going to use that all the time now. Oh, my goodness. See, I came here to teach something. Now I'm the one learning. Oh, my goodness. And yes, so let's continue. I really just want to hit this last thing before we go. How does this little bit work? How do we get all of this stuff in here to change their colors? Well, like I said before, all of these layers, every single layer in here is referencing their color. They're looking at a color effect, and then that color effect, that fill, is taking its cues from this adjustment layer. Here we go. From these effects here. So all of these are kind of locked down. And then the only thing that really needs to change is color 3. So color 3 on this adjustment layer, well, heck, just have a look at the comp called end card. That's the one that this lives inside. Look at this layer, look at this effect, look at the value, and then we're applying the same thing. So case 1, it looks like this. Case 2, it looks like that. And then finally, that's the last one. So this is a really great way to swap between color themes. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense for people. I know that we're kind of coming into the kind of end of the program here, so I just want to make sure that oh no, I've navigated away from the page I wanted. Here we go. I'm just going to copy this. If you want to learn more about this drop-down stuff, I think this is where you go get it. So you can enjoy that help document right there. I just realized that there's a delay between when I speak and when you see it come up on the screen. So you might have no idea why I just pasted that in there. But I want to thank you all for coming out and hanging with me here on the stream. Hold on. Ooh. There we go. And, it's been great to hang out with you here on this Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon for me might be Friday morning for you. It could be a lot of times of the day. Just as expressions can be universal, I guess time needs to be universalized too. So thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging out with me here on the stream. I'm going to be back at you next week, next Friday, same time. So definitely come and join us for that. We're going to be looking at a whole other not-profit from the Bay Area, not-for-profit entity. We're going to be giving them a little bit of a glow up, doing a little makeover for them. And of course, if you have any troubles, I want you to get at me. I want you to ask me questions. I'm going to be posting some information about this on the Behance, on this wonderful Behance that you should be watching this on now. So stay tuned. Follow either myself or the Adobe Live account here on Behance, and you'll see we're co-owners of these cool projects. So we will see that come up. Thank you for all of your well wishes, everyone. I'll try to get well soon. Speaking of plugs, while we're here, if you are not familiar with my tutorial channel, check out youtube.com/ECAbrams. We got good stuff out there. If you liked learning about expressions, all this stuff, we get into it deep sometimes over there. And Joel, don't worry, Kyle and I will be returning to the theater of liveness coming up in March, actually. So if you want to follow along for that, but hang out here on Adobe Live. Hang out with us all next week. There's a lot of stuff going on. More master classes, more experts. The Behance Live team is really crushing it out here. There's so many good things. So without further ado, I want to say thank you again for coming out here, spending time with me. I love it. And we will see you all next time. Thanks again, and I'll see you around the internet. Oh, which button is it? There we go.